Hello and welcome to another episode of That 60s Recording Podcast, the podcast that has conversations inspired by the golden era of recording. Before we begin, I'd just like to remind you to go and check out Mojo Cables if you hadn't already. It's a new venture I have on the go with my good friend Matty, who is an electrical engineer and guitarist, and we have been making beautiful bespoke, not bespoke, but boutique. I guess we could do bespoke, but they're boutique instrument cables. Yes, they're made of the highest quality Van Damme cable we could find. They feel beautiful and they're available in 4 colors at the moment. And we use as a studio owner, I was very particular about the types of connectors I wanted to use. So I was very happy that we found these lovely sort of slim black connectors that tuck in really nicely. There's nothing I hate more than those big sort of chunky connectors. I'm just not into them at all. So each cable is hand soldered, vacuum silicon sealed, and with a vacuum shield around it, so they are not going anywhere. And everyone comes with a lifetime guarantee because we are so confident that they're just going to last because they're just robust and sturdy and beautiful cables. We're very, very proud of them, as you can tell. So go and check them out at mojocables.com. Okay, on to the episode. It's the second half of my conversation with Alex Bennett of Sound Recordings in Melbourne, Australia. And if you haven't already, get your notebook out because there's some great advice coming up in this second half too. And we begin by discussing guitar and bass recording processes, which is something I've kind of neglected to talk about before because I'm so obsessed with drums. But yeah, I thought this would be a good place, a good thing to speak about. So here we go. Alex Bennett of Sound Recordings. Do you have any specific starting points for? I'm always conscious that I jump straight to drums because that's what I love. But yeah, it's I'm sure there's lots of people listening to this who would be interested to know about your approach to, say, guitar amp recording, or do you are you recording bass amps or do you like to DI in? What's your approach to the other instruments that are not drums?
Again, it's different every time. Generally, I will have to start with figuring out how much of it they want to do live. And I do like to suggest they do as much as they can live because that'll give you a better, more rockin' vibey bed, right? Yeah. If you can do the whole rhythm section at once, do it, is generally what I say. And then I say, do you practice together? Yes. Well, then let's do it all together, because why would you get into a recording studio and then suddenly do it completely differently?
Yeah.
That's always baffled me from when I first started recording at the university, as a student, that like as soon as a band came into the studio, they did everything one by one. And I just could not get my head around that because I played in bands and I was like, that sounds boring and it sounds hard and you're going to use a click track? Jesus. So first and foremost, the decision as to how we record the bass and the guitars will be like, well, what are we doing all at once and how slick do you want this record to sound? Is this a 90s record? In which case, let's separate everything. So I have on the property a few adjoining rooms to the main live space, which is the stone building that we were talking about. So there's a little cottage right next door to the studio, which the bands stay in. Here's a little plug for anyone in Melbourne who wants to record here. You can stay on the property, so you can come for a week and make a record. How's that for a holiday? But yeah, so I have tie lines. And by tie lines, I mean holes in the wall that I can plug amplifier cabinets into the next room. So we can have amps in the live room with the players, but their speakers can be next door. So if your guitar amp needs to be cranking, then great. But if you want it to sound like a 90s heavy record, then you don't want that rubbish in your drum mics.
No.
So let's separate your loud guitar, because I'm not going to tell you to turn it down either. if people want to play loud, then they can play loud. And then if the bass needs to be an amplifier, again, we'll stick that next door in a different part of the room. But if the bass doesn't need to be an amplifier, if it's a nice instrument and you're going for a really slick 70s record sound anyway, just DI it. You know, I've got a nice sounding DI. You can plug it straight into any of the preamps. So if we are going to DI a bass, generally we'll try that bass out in solid state preamp that's like a Neve vibe, or stick it into a tube preamp, or plug it into one of the Ampex channels or something, that if you want it to be a Motown style DI, then you can do a Motown style DI, or if you want it to be a real clean big 70s DI, then stick it into that, so you can still choose an awesome DI sound.
Yeah.
And almost always, unless there's distortion involved or fuzz or wild overdrive, you don't need to use a bass amp. Or, both if you want, if you want to go to town. But I generally wouldn't capture a DI and a bass amp sound separately. Would be blending it on the fly, probably.
Yes. Yeah.
But, track count's always an issue. But yeah, so that's how I would approach the guitars and the basses. And I have another adjoining room which is in a separate building altogether, which is in the house that I live in, which is a big empty hall. So I have an acoustic echo chamber on site.
Wow.
And for rock and roll band projects, for the tracking, that will often have a guitar cab in it. Cool. So you can have rhythm guitar, if it's not too loud, in the main live room, or you can have rhythm guitar in the adjoining cottage, and then you can have your lead guitar going up into the big echo chamber. And I'll often put a mic close to the amp and then have one far back in the room, so I can capture a close sound and a far sound. And all of that happening simultaneously with a drum kit in the live space on its own, or maybe with a bit of rhythm guitar, or there could be some guide vocals in there splashing around, but that stuff generally doesn't matter because you'll be adding overdubs on top of that and making it sound great.
Yeah.
Later. So yeah, there are lots of ways you can set up a tracking session here. Or sometimes everyone just wants to be in the live room with their amps at just the right level. If they're okay with having their amps at just the right level in order to not completely destroy the drum sound, then we do it like that. But that's generally people who want a 50s or a 60s rock and roll sound.
Yeah.
As soon as we start leading into 70s, 80s, 90s vibes or whatever, then we start separating and making it slick.
I'm really enjoying the fact that you've referenced 80s and 90s stuff as well, because I hadn't really thought up until this very conversation at how sort of where music's come from and how quickly it evolved through those eras, and how specifically you need to adjust things to get those sounds. And I love that all of those options are there, where in the way that you're talking about, and you can pick and choose and blend those options as you wish. And yeah, it just occurred to me, and as you were speaking then, that we're quite fortunate to have sort of 50 or 60 years worth of recording history behind us that we can cherry pick ideas from.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. And when I started, I was obsessed with the 50s and 60s, but as I've grown older, I've really started to appreciate everything else as well. With regards to tape recording anyway, like I really do love stuff from the 70s, like big time. And right now, I think maybe mid to late 70s could be my favorite in terms of technological feats, as in like electronic design and tape recorder design was just wicked. Like I love the MCI machines now. they work really well. They're easy for me to service. But yeah, the clarity of 1977 was phenomenal. I still love the crust and the gnar of the 60s. That said, there's been hi-fi in every era. You know what I mean? Like the Capitol recordings from the late 50s are supreme. So I still love that. But yeah, I guess I never wanted to stay in one area. Like I didn't want to ever be typecast as just the place to go to make 60s records.
Yes, yeah.
So slightly worried about the name of your podcast, because I only want to talk about don't recordings.
We veer off all the time. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but yeah. So I've fallen in love with every era of tape recording, basically, and I don't dislike music from today. My child, for example, loves R&B and hip hop, and so I listen to lots and lots of that, and it's obviously all made on computers, and I'm probably not going to start making those records, but, there's stuff I love about them. But there was a lot of great music from the 80s and the 90s as well. Yeah. And actually, they were all using tape recorders up until about 1998 or something. It is baffling. And then the curve just gets exponential from there.
Yeah, the last 20 years is not something I've really... I guess I grew up with it, so I haven't given it a much sort of a reflection, if you like. But yeah, I can't imagine. I've spoken to engineers who began or were sort of beginning the meat of their career through the 90s, and then having to move through, into sort of the digital realm. And yeah, thinking back on it, it is a crazy period of time that it all. We all listened to records from the 90s, the early 90s, and it never occurred to me when I was younger that they were made on tape, because by the time I got around to going to studios myself, it was all done on computer. So I just assumed that's how it was, Yeah.
No, it's funny, isn't it? It's funny. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a rabbit hole of thought that I'm curious about sort of microphones and preamps and outboard gear and sort of not sure where to start with it. Maybe maybe your first acquisitions or some of the things that you particularly like, or if you have a particular lot of signal path that you enjoy using.
Signal path, make it as short as possible. So my rule is, as with everything, like less is more, and I'm just choose the right microphone into the right preamp and then straight to the tape. So in my world, noise is always going to be an issue, and getting the signal to the tape machine straight away without too many circuits in the chain is preferable. Microphone choice is always important for me to get that sound as good as it can straight away. If the musician has got their instrument ready and it sounds the way they want it to sound, I've then got to just replicate that on my end. Microphone choice is basically, is it quiet? Is it loud? So is it a condenser or is it a dynamic? How clear does it need to be? Is it too bright? Do I need to make it softer? That'll be the things that lead to my decision as to whether it's a dynamic mic or a ribbon or a condenser, or perhaps a combination of two, which I'm getting more into now as I get older.
Yeah.
Have a dynamic and a ribbon, or a dynamic and a condenser, blending them on the fly to make it more three-dimensional. So there's the 90s influencing the clarity of the 60s. But what was the original question?
Oh, just opening up the conversation about mic choices and sort of outboard and things you like using.
Yeah. Oh well, look, I'm always changing my mind as well. Like
Yeah.
when I first started doing the tape recordings, I guess around the between 2010 and 2012, I at that time I hated condensers. I again coming from university educational world where you would have engineering classes and people setting up mics on a drum kit. They just have like 30 microphones and they were all condensers. And it just would be a dog's breakfast of brightness
Yeah.
on the other side. And just like it all sounded the same and not good enough. And so at the time then I was strictly using dynamics and ribbons
Oh, wow.
as a kind of self-imposed revolt against condensers. But over the years, I have learnt to love the condenser, and now I've got loads of them.
Nice.
I've got small capsule condensers, large capsule condensers, solid state, valve, different kinds of each ones of those from different eras, and now I love them, and I love all types of microphones. So I think the key now is to blend them all to make the collage. And I try not to be too stuck in any one way. And I always like to try something new on every single session.
Oh, interesting.
That's not my theories. I've heard more than one people say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that keeps me experimenting with sounds. And I'll always, on every session, put a microphone on something I hadn't put it on before. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe this one will be the wild card on the guitar this time. But it might be paired with one I've used before. So
yeah, just in case.
Just to see. Or sometimes I'll open up the drawer and let the musicians see them all, and they'll be drawn to one because it looks weird.
Yeah.
Or they think it looks cool, or they've seen that in a picture of on the back of a record. So sometimes I let the person choose their microphone, particularly if it's a vocal take. Sometimes I'll put up 2 or 3 mics for a vocal take, and I will let them sing and listen and vibe on the mics. Sometimes I'll do a blind test on vocal mics. If we're comparing 2 or 3 vocal mics, I'll record all 3, and they'll come into the control room and have them muted or armed and listen to them on their own. And I won't tell them which was which, because sometimes they think they like the look of the RCA.
Yeah.
The RCA 77 looks great, doesn't always sound right. And, they might not like the look of the 70s condenser, but it turns out they like the sound of that one best. So
I enjoy
they
that.
go for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It reminds me of the thing that came up in Now Anne's Eyes conversation where he's talking about it's about your ears, not the gear. And it's
exactly.
all that. I love it.
Exactly. And that's, I guess, going back to that question you had before about what do people think about the space when they come in. One of the first things most people notice is there's no screen. There's no screen in my studio at all because there is no computer.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Studio. So
you're used to the screen being the focal point, aren't you, when you walk in?
So when you look, there is no the focal point in my studio. There's a painting on the wall, and there are 2 speakers. And there's VU meters everywhere, but nobody really knows what they're telling them. I know what they're telling me.
Yeah, you'd hope so. Yeah,
they're not much to look at for somebody who's trying to figure out if it sounds right. So yeah, most people find that very liberating, and I obviously find it very liberating because I hate staring at the screen.
Yeah.
Particularly if you're trying to make decisions about how something sounds. So I picked that up in university some point along the lines. One of my lecturers was telling me about Pythagoras. Pythagoras used to teach, used to deliver lectures from behind a screen, like a black screen.
Oh, no, I didn't know that. I mean, obviously I know of Pythagoras.
So it's an anecdote. I don't know if it's true, but I like to believe it, that Pythagoras would teach his students from behind a black screen so that they would listen to him.
Interesting.
Listen to what was being said and not look at the person saying it.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. I like that idea.
And they believed that was a more powerful tool for interpreting information.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with that. If you take the image away from a musical excerpt, you'll hear more, you'll listen in more. So I love that about analog recording, is that you're just listening the whole time,
mm-hmm.
and you can hear exactly what's going on, because you're not being your interpretation of the music is not being convoluted by the waveforms that are all different colors and different shapes, and that doesn't look right. But it's so funny when I see a waveform of the recordings from my studio. I'm like, oh wow, is that how it looks? Huh. Funny. You know, I'm so not used to waveforms now.
Yeah.
I get very used to the way the VU meters behave, but ultimately it doesn't matter what the waveform looks like.
No.
You know.
That's it's so interesting. My mind's racing with with all sorts. It's great. I love that idea of we are so guilty. I mean, me especially, of looking at your DAW and seeing a waveform and making a judgment on the sound quality by how big it is,
and by how big it is, or how pointy it is, or how fat it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget all of that, because that is a 100% 21st century habit.
Yes,
you can actually do it if you can control your surfaces or machines in a way that everything's armed and has a track fader assigned to it. Turn your screen off. Something I tell people as well. If you want to do this at home, just to unplug your screen, have it so you're just listening to your microphones. You can obviously need to have everything armed or whatever, so you can control it. But you don't have to use your screen when you're capturing the sounds.
No,
you don't have to. If you can arm everything and record it without the screen, then do it.
I think that would be a really interesting challenge for a lot of people, me included. I think that'd be very cool.
Yeah, and I think you'll end up. Well, I certainly am just speaking from my own experience. You'll end up learning way more about what the mic is doing, where it's pointing. You know, how you can change that then by changing the instrument or the way it's projecting in the room or the position of the mic, or change the mic. Because that's, for me, that's where everything happens.
Yes.
That moment of that interface between the microphone and the source. You know.
Yeah, I think
not right there, it's never going to be right.
No. Most people's first reaction this is something we hear a lot from especially the older generation of engineers who, I've spoken to for this podcast, who worked through the 60s and 70s. And our initial reaction perhaps now would be to reach for an EQ, like the standard EQ on the channel if something's not sounding right. And the reality is that a small adjustment in mic placement is going to make that change for you. And you
can do the same thing without imparting any electronic noise or distortion on the signal.
No,
because I learned that very early on, that anything you insert into the chain, even if it's an EQ that's in bypass mode, it might be coloring the sound, which is fine if you're into that. But if you know it's coloring the sound and you're not using it, then just remove it. Color it later if it's not right. That's because, in my world, we still will arrive at the mixing session, which might happen at the end of a week of recording, or people may return after a little while to mix something. And then we hear it again and go, oof, didn't get that right. But that's when we'll EQ it.
Yeah.
Not straight away. Because anything you're going to do is a distortion.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, in my opinion, my favorite records ever are the ones that weren't fucked with that much.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a gross assumption. It would be case by case basis, but a lot of the great ones really were just straight away simple, and that's why they were great.
Yes.
And the performance is good ultimately.
I mean, that's the
But going back to the technology, one of the interesting things about my setup is the main mixing console that's at the center of it has gone through a few iterations in its life. It was an early 70s English mixing console, but it's been heavily modified at least 3 times in its life. And in its current state in my studio, it's really just a mixing desk. It's line in and line out, and it's got auxiliaries and bussing options, but it has no EQ.
Okay.
There's 14 channels on that desk with no EQ because all the EQs were taken out, racked, and sold to someone. And because I needed more output capabilities, all the spaces in the console that were EQ are now taken up by bussing options.
I love that.
Which is awesome because it stopped me and everybody else who comes in diving into the EQ. You'll often find that when you are working with people who have been in a studio before and they come in to hear the first playback, they love to go, oh, where's the EQ? And like start messing with the sound, which is fine. I'm not precious about it. No. But I've inadvertently removed that option from everybody, including myself.
Yeah, I love that.
So if you want to use an EQ, you have to patch it in.
Yes, this is a conscious decision.
It's a conscious decision, and you have to take out the cable, you have to patch the EQ in, and then move over to that EQ wherever it is in the room and twiddle with it. So by removing that capability, it 100% helps straight away. So it's microphone, preamp, tape channel, and then the return for the tape, you can't EQ it unless you want to.
Yes, yeah. Fantastic.
So, yeah. And that was by accident. That was just because the console, when I got it, that's just how it was going to come. And I needed bussing options and the EQs weren't in it. Mm-hmm. I didn't want my tech to reinvent the EQs in it. That said, there is I have got another wing of a little sidecar mixer that does have EQ, but that's only sometimes patched in.
Yes.
And there are other preamps that have EQs on them, and there's EQs in the room. So if something needs to be EQ'd, we can EQ everything eventually.
Yeah.
We just have to like get it there first.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love that. So I've got a few more questions before we wrap up. So I guess I always ask people to suggest a piece of advice that would be useful. And I think in your case, it might be if people are listening to this and either recording at home or preparing to approach a session, what would the whole conversation is essentially a giant piece of advice, but if you could distill it into a sentence or two, what would you say to people who are sort of starting on kind of a recording journey and what might be useful for them to think about?
Well, there has been a few tidbits already, so I dare say people might have picked up a few things.
Yeah.
Aside from less is more, which I've said more than once, have one of each microphone on hand at all times, I think. Have dynamics, have condensers, and have ribbons. They don't have to be expensive, but just like learning about those 3 types of mics is awesome. Also, pickup patterns, haven't even gone there, but when to use an omnidirectional microphone, when to use a figure 8 microphone, and when to use a cardioid. All the music technology 101 things are really handy if you're gonna try and do things simply like the way I do in my world, because it's just the combination of all those elements that make a great recording. And think about one thing I always try and do is capture the source, but also capture the ambience as well. It's if you've got the tracks, to have a close sound and a far sound is something that I like to have on hand.
Yeah.
Or at least have blended on the fly. Like sometimes people will wonder how a recording sounds nice and why they're not getting a good sound, because everything's up close. You know, if you've got a mic on up close on everything, it just sounds one-dimensional. So to make things three-dimensional, have space in there.
Yes.
So like having at least one element of ambience on every recording at some point, or have that ambience there always, but you can blend it in and out when you need it.
I like that advice a lot. I think that's really useful.
Yeah, that's imparted in very old-fashioned recordings just because all the mics were in the one room and they were live, so there's space. But then more modern recordings can have the danger of being dry without space.
Yeah, definitely.
And use real space. That's the other thing. Like, a lot of studios these days will just have lots of different reverb effects in the computer, and people don't consider using real spaces. So even if it's just using your live room again as an echo chamber is something I would always recommend. So I obviously have luxury of an actual hall that is, you know, big and wooden and have bricks and, you know, it's separate. So I pump sound into that and pump it back in. So almost all the recordings from my joint have stereo room ambience in it.
It doesn't have to be anything sort of too, you know, quite as swanky as that. I mean, I've done recordings where, in my old studio where there was, we had a little narrow corridor, and I just put a mic in the corridor, and that was that. And, you know, people listening at home, you know, there's the classic of stick it in the bathroom or put it wherever there is ambience. And it doesn't have to be
wherever you've got ambience, you can put sound into there and capture it and blend it in to create dimension and space and time. Play with space and time.
I think people will be pleasantly surprised as well about how, if they haven't experimented with this, is how much better real life space sounds as opposed to manufactured space. It's night and day.
I just say it sounds real because it is real.
Yeah, well, yeah.
You can go to town on blending in an acoustic echo, and it won't ever get to that point where it's that fake, where it's like fake, and your brain can tell when it's fake. I mean, that said, there's still the right reverb for each song based on texture and tempo and like the atmosphere you want to create. So I do generally mix a combination of I've got a stereo spring reverb, I've got a stereo plate reverb that I made, and I've got the acoustic echo chamber. So if you can't get the right reverb out of either one of those three or a combination of all three, then you don't need reverb on the song. But with delay components added to all of those, you can achieve almost any atmosphere. So I would recommend experimenting with those kind of elements too. Delaying reverb or reverberating delay.
It's interesting. I think again it would be another good challenge for people to attempt that in their own homes, and they're sort of finding a space that they like, and finding some delay that they perhaps not tape delay if they're not using.
Well, no, but you don't have to have tape delay. Like, just the basic delay plugins will do it. And when I say delay, it just needs to be like, ranging from like 20 or 30 milliseconds through to, 100 or more. But generally those types of pre-delay times going into an echo chamber is all you need to separate it from the source and make it sound awesome. So like back in the day, it was really just a 50 to 80 millisecond delay created by another tape recorder that was in repro mode, and that signal would be fed to an echo chamber. So creating a slapback into an echo chamber and feeding that in, and if you can recreate that with your hallway and a DigiDesign delay plugin, go for it.
Yeah,
give that a go instead of using a whole reverb digitally.
There was some air quotes there.
Air quotes, whole reverb.
So I I've been enjoying. So as I sort of said to you before we started recording, I've been speaking to quite a few Australians recently, and I've enjoyed finding a whole world of music that I wasn't really aware of before. So if there was, do you have a record that you're particularly proud of that you worked on that you think could sort of gives a good representation of the way that your space sounds? Maybe not like the way the space sounds, the way the process sounds, if you like.
Yeah, well, again, there would be more than one genre happening. That said, one record I am very fond of that I think is it's just a great package. It's a great record. It's a band called Gonzo, and the record is called "Do It Better Again."
Okay.
And that was an 8-track recording, but a really good example of what you can do on an 8-track recording.
Okay.
For me, it's very hi-fi. I think it's very slick. And the brief for that one was like a post-punk sound in the realm of the Gang of Four.
Okay.
Was the brief. Gang of Four's first record.
Yeah.
And I reckon we nailed it.
Nice.
I keep coming back to that record and I'm always pleasantly surprised about what we created. So that's on a really great label called Anti-Fade Records.
Yes.
That some dear friends of mine are involved with.
Okay.
And they're doing great things. Check out Anti-Fade Records and check out Gonzo.
Excellent.
But that's only one, I love punk rock, so that's what I go to at the moment in my mind. But there's been so many other great records. I shouldn't be made to choose.
I'm sorry. I pushed you.
No, that's all right. But you spoke to Liam, so I guess you've heard the Teskey Brothers live at the Forum album.
Yes.
Yeah.
We spoke about we spoke a lot about how live albums are not there's not enough of them these days, and
not enough of them these days. Well, they might be a thing of the past very soon.
Well, yeah.
No more gigs.
No. Well, fortunately, we've been back going a little while here.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Whether that's a good thing it's a good thing for sort of earning money, I guess, but not necessarily for people's lives. Anyway, there's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah.
I don't know where I stand on it. It's an interesting one. Back to music before I get political. So last question, I guess, is what's kind of next? What's the projects, or what's kind of the next things that's coming for you? Whether that's artists you're working with or plans for the space, or what's next on your agenda?
Well, in terms of artists I'm working with next, I've got a long list of reschedules. So who knows when I'm actually going to have a band in the studio again. I've been working with a lot of really great local acts, though. So that's one thing that the current lockdowns have done is in some sense increase the amount of activity with regional local acts. There's a great band called K5 who I've worked with a couple of times. So listeners should check out K5 if you're into strong female 90s inspired rock and roll. They're awesome. They're an awesome punk band. There's another great band called Good Moon that I've just done a project with, and that's almost finished. Okay. So lots of exciting things happening with local people. In terms of technology, I have another build on the go with my technician, who is for those who are interested, you should check out Ekadek Electronics and Sound, who are based out of Te Aroha in Auckland, not Auckland, sorry, in New Zealand. So Greg from Ecodec is currently designing a 10-channel sidecar to be installed into the main rig so that I can deal with the 16-channel mixes a lot better.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'll now have 20 channels on my console that will be matched, and that actually will have 10 channels of EQ in line there. So what I said about the EQ before is people might be able to dive in now.
Yeah.
And EQ what they're hearing on the spot. But that's been a mod that's been a long time coming.
Yes.
Obviously for monetary reasons, but also, I had to be there. I had to be ready. Now that I've got the 16-track recorder running, the mix downs need to be a little more streamlined.
Mm-hmm.
So there'll be more mixing power installed soon. I would love to increase the amount of channels that I've got tying the large echo space to the main control room. So I'd love to upgrade that to 16 channels going back to the control room in case I wanted to put a string section in the echo chamber.
Wow.
That'd be cool.
That'd be extremely cool.
If we're allowed to have 20 or 30 players in a room ever again, we could have the possibility of doing some pretty luscious overdub sessions in the echo chamber. More of a big band room. That'd be cool to get more of that, the Wrecking Crew vibe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe recreate a David Axelrod feel. That said, who's got the time or the money to employ an orchestra these days? Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. But aside from that, there's no plans at the moment to get a 24-track tape recorder.
That's got to be the next on the list at some stage.
I did it once. I said I would never get a 16-track, and here I am with a 16-track machine. But I don't want to lose the headroom. I'm happy with the resolution of 16 tracks over 2-inch is phenomenal, and I don't want to increase the noise floor and reduce the headroom of having 24 tracks over 2-inch. So I don't think I'm going to go there. Plus, I need more. Then I need more channels, and I don't need more channels. It's too many.
Well,
16's too many already.
Yes, well, yeah, I can see that. Very cool. Yeah. Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with me, and I hope that I think people will have loved listening to this. So yeah, thank you.
I hope so. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, so there we have it, the final part of my conversation with Alex Bennett. Do go and check out his Instagram, which is @soundrecordings, and give him a message if you're interested. I mean, if you're listening to this in Melbourne and you're interested in working with Alex, definitely give him a message. And then if you're not in Australia, then just go and have a look at the studio. It's such an inspiring place. And, we all love a bit of escapism, and it just is interesting to see other people's studios. But yeah, go and check out some of the pictures, and there's tons of good pictures of mic placements and all sorts of stuff on there. And I would recommend just sort of scrolling through and having a look. It's definitely sounds like a bit of an odd thing to say about Instagram, but it's one of the nicer accounts that I've enjoyed scrolling through and learning from. So do go and do that, and also go and check out some of the bands that Alex just recommended. I have them all up here. We've just finished the conversation actually, and I have them all here ready to dive in. So I'm going to check them out on while I'm doing my daddy daycare. It's a Tuesday night. In fact, it's just clocked onto Wednesday because Alex is in Australia, so I had to speak to him very late. It's also why my voice probably sounds quite tired. Anyway, I'm rambling, so I'm going to move on. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do that. My email address is joe@allyouneedisdrums.com. You could also support this podcast by buying a lovely enamel mug, which you can purchase from my website, allyouneedisdrums.com. And that just leaves me to say a huge thank you to Rory Hancock for editing and uploaded this podcast, to Joe Kane for the intro and outro music, and to David Henshaw for the artwork he supplies. You guys have a fantastic week, and we will be back next Tuesday. Okay, goodbye.